people who are in church and are Christians are asking the same question. What is my purpose? How many of you have asked that question? Some of us have sat in church for years and years and years and years, and you find yourself at the altar time after time after time and year after year, still asking that same question, Lord, what is my purpose? What is the plan that you have for my life? It's a question that haunts and taunts us because most of us believe if the Lord would just speak to us and say, this is that one thing that I created you to do. This is what I manufactured you for. We feel like we could finally make things come together and work right for us in our life and all would be well. But I submit to you today that it is not discovering that purpose that will get you to your destiny. But it is something much more deep and greater than that. The book of Mark, the 5th chapter, beginning at the 35th verse. 35th verse reads, it says, and the same day when the even was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over unto the other side. I want you to remember that. And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship. And there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And when he was in, this is them talking about Jesus, and he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have what? No faith. He didn't say little. He said no faith. And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? May the Lord add a blessing to his already blessed and read word. I want to bounce back up to the first verse. If we have to understand the people that they were dealing with, and some of you all might get a little angry with me right here and might not understand, but if you'll bear with me, you'll begin to understand. The people that Jesus was dealing with and that were with him were not ignorant to what he did and his common practices. They went with him where he went. Where he slept, they slept. What he ate, they ate. What he did, they most of the times attempted to do. These were the disciples that Jesus had handpicked and chosen to walk with him. They knew about his character. They were there when he was healing and giving sight to the blind. They were there when he was causing limbs to grow back. They were there when the dead was getting up. They were there with all of these things and these great miracles that were going on. But they were fishermen. And most of the times we will find that the disciples did some very dumb things. They didn't quite comprehend what it was that Jesus was doing at the moment. So in order for him to get the real message across, it wasn't enough for him to just tell them. There were things that they had to experience in order for them to get the real lesson. Are you hearing me today? So here's these fishermen who are probably know more about the sea than Jesus would have seemed to have thought to known at that time, because he was a carpenter by trade. He wasn't a fisherman. So when he said, let's go to the other side, it was up to them to find the right ship. It was up to them to find the right boat size. It was up to them to make sure that the sails were just set right. It was up to them to make sure that the weather was as it should be. And I want to tell you something. You will never make me believe that they were not able. They didn't have a meteorologist to tell them what the evening weather was going to be, or give a flash flood warning, or say, hey, there's a storm on the horizon. They just out of their knowing and out of their experience, I had to look, and there's no way that you will ever get me to believe that they were just looking at the sky and there was no sign of a storm on the horizon. Many of you have gotten into this ship called salvation, and you saw storms on the horizon, but you said, because Jesus is in the ship, I'm going to go anyway. I'm going to go anyway. And Jesus says to them, he says, let us pass over into the other side. You have to understand that what was going on before this to understand what's happening during and after, and what was the real main event here. What was going on before was Jesus had been preaching all day to the multitude. That's why they had to send them away. He was tired. He was worn out. He was God, but he was still wrapped up in this flesh that we know. He was still feeling everything that a man would feel. If you preached all day and got tired, guess what? Jesus, if he preached all day, he would get tired. He was hungry. He was tired. He was sleepy. And in the midst of this great storm that came, we find Jesus asleep. Not just on one of the wooden boards, but the Bible declares that he found a pillow and went to sleep. And he didn't just go to sleep lightly. He found him a good place to snuggle up real good. And I imagine he just curled up in the fetal position and just probably sawed on some of them logs that were back there. He was content. And here comes the storm. Verse 37 says, and there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And I'm reading this because I need you to get a full mental picture of what was going on here. And I'm going to preach in just a second. I just need you to understand all of the schematics of what's happening and what leads up to the main event. And let me tell you right now, what you think is the main event is not the main event. It says that the ship was now full. Now keep in mind that during this, Jesus is still asleep, which means if the ship was full and he's asleep and there's a storm and the waves are that high, he's not dry anymore. By this time, Jesus has got to be waterlogged and floating, but the Bible declares that he's still asleep. No doubt, Jesus had taken a couple of swallows of water by that time, but yet he still slept. And here comes the disciples. Master, hey, wake up! How dare you be asleep? And here we are in the midst of this storm. Here we are in the midst of all of this wind. Do you not care that we perish? First mistake. They began to speak out of their mouths things that contradicted what Jesus said from the beginning. Some of you are beginning to see, and some of you are beginning to get it. We're going to make it plain in just a second. Master, you don't care that we're drowning? You don't care that this ship is going down? You better find something to hold on to. You better get up your own self. Do you not understand that they didn't go to Jesus to save them? They were going to Jesus to tell him to save himself. Some of y'all will get that when you get home. Hey man, we're going down. Some of you in your life are looking around and you're looking at your circumstances, which is your storm, and you're saying, I'm going down, and you're reaching and you're grabbing for everything that you can find when you miss the one thing that you were supposed to be holding on to. Let me take you back to verse 1, to verse 35. And in the same day when the evening was come, he saith unto them, let us pass over unto the other side. Now, if your Bible is like mine, those words are in red, which means from the beginning, Jesus said, let us go to the other side, because with the beginning, before they ever stepped foot in the boat, they already knew, Jesus already knew that the storm was on the horizon. He already knew that there was a storm out there, so he had to put his word down and make sure that their destiny and where they were getting to was already secure. Some of you have been wondering, why is it that I'm backpedaling? Why is it that I can't get any further? Because you forgot the first word that Jesus spoke to you. We've read this scripture, and we've read this story for years. And the main character in this story has been what? The storm. Oh, the great tempest. Oh, the great storm. But that's not the main character at all. The main character wasn't even Jesus. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It was the words that Jesus spoke. It was the words that Jesus spoke. Jesus could see beyond where the disciples could see. He could see beyond what they had already known in their knowledge. See, their knowledge could only take them so far. But because Jesus was at the beginning and he's at the end, because he's Alpha and Omega, it doesn't matter what's at your beginning, and it matters not what's in the middle, but it's about what's at the end. Jesus understood that had he not spoke the word at the beginning, they would never make it to the other side. And here are the disciples. There's a twofold story here. Verse 39, it says, and he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, peace, be still. Now, you got to understand, the only reason he could call peace is because he was asleep in peace. Peace was already in him. He was peace, and that was how he was able to speak peace. Some of you can't speak peace in your life because you can't find peace to begin with. You got to get peace in your life before you can speak peace to your situation. Jesus was already peace, and that's why he was able to speak to the situation that they found themselves in. Many of us are evaluating where we are and where we're going, and why can't I get to where it is? What is my purpose, Lord? What is it that I'm called to do? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? I can't figure this thing out, and the reason that you can't is because your circumstances keep blinding you. The waves are hitting you, and you're ready to jump off the boat. You're ready to go for a swim, but you've got to understand something, that because Jesus had already spoke to where they were to be at, Jesus had already spoke to their destiny. It was because of that that it made that ship more safe than the Titanic. The Titanic, at the beginning of the movie, they said that God himself couldn't sink this ship. That was their first mistake. But you better find a word from God, and if what people are saying to you is not what Jesus says in his word, you better look him in the face and tell him, shut up, because that's not what he said about my destiny. Our destiny is wrapped up in the words that Jesus speaks to us. Our destiny and where it is that we're going and where it is that God is trying to get us to. How many of you remember when you got saved? Do you remember? How many of you remember where you were at? How many of you remember being on that altar? And wherever you were at before, now let me ask you this. Let me back up before that. How many of you remember where you were before you got saved? Oh, see, there it is. Look at that. Look at that. Most of you remember where you were before because guess what? When we were living in sin, don't get it twisted, we enjoyed our sin. I'm not testifying about the sin. I'm just telling you how the devil and how the enemy works. What you were doing, you were enjoying doing it. That's why you didn't want to get saved. Oh, y'all got real quiet right there. You didn't want to be delivered from what you're doing because what you were doing was feeling good to your flesh. But you remember what it was that you used to do. But something got you up out of the seat that you were in. And some of y'all might not even got saved at church. You might have been at home, in your living room, in your car, in your bathroom, wherever you might have, your kitchen, wherever you might have found yourself. It was at that moment when Jesus spoke to you and said, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm tired. Jesus. You know what? Jesus got tired of our mess. And he said, I'm going to hit you and thump you in your heart so hard that you won't be able to sit in